The Xyloth Empire covered 40 star systems. Every planet, every space station, every ship followed one ruler. Empress Kalindra sat on the throne, and she ruled with numbers. Mathematics was everything to the Xyloth people. They believed math was the true language of the universe. A person who could not do math was considered broken. The Empress had twin daughters. Princess Serena and Princess Vexa were 15 years old. They had purple skin like all Xyloth, with silver markings on their faces that showed their royal blood. They were supposed to be perfect. They were supposed to be brilliant. Instead, they were failures. For the third time, both princesses had failed the royal mathematics examination. No royal in the entire history of the empire had ever failed this test. Not once. The twins had now failed 3 times. The palace was in chaos. Council members whispered in the hallways. They said terrible things. They said the princesses were defective. They said the royal bloodline was weak. Some even suggested that the twins should never be allowed to rule the empire. Empress Kalindra felt rage and fear in equal measure. She had tried everything to help her daughters. She brought in the greatest mathematicians from all 40 star systems. They taught the twins for months. It did not work. She paid for quantum learning implants to be placed in the girls' brains. The implants were supposed to make learning faster and easier. They did not help. She gave them pills that were supposed to make their minds sharper. The pills made the twins sick instead. Nothing worked. Serena and Vexa tried so hard. They studied until late into the night. They worked until their eyes hurt and their heads ached. But when test day came, they froze. Their minds went blank. They could not think. The numbers on the page looked like enemies. The twins were not stupid. They were scared. Every time they made a mistake, their tutors looked disappointed. Every time they got an answer wrong, they felt shame. Mathematics was supposed to be natural for Xyloth. If they could not do it, what did that mean about them? Far from the royal chambers, in a different part of the palace, Marcus Webb was mopping a floor. He wore a gray uniform that marked him as station maintenance staff. His job was simple. He cleaned. He fixed small broken things. He emptied trash. He was invisible. Marcus was human. He came from Earth. He was 42 years old, with dark hair starting to turn gray at the edges. His hands were rough from work. His back hurt most days. He had not always been a janitor. 5 years ago, Marcus had been an aerospace engineer on Earth. He had designed parts for spacecraft. He had been good at his job. Then he made a mistake. It was a small error in his calculations. That small error caused an explosion. 3 people died. The accident broke something inside Marcus. His wife, Sarah, tried to help him, but grief lived in him like a stone. When Sarah got sick and died 2 years later, Marcus could not stay on Earth anymore. Everything reminded him of his failures. He took his son Tommy, who was 7 years old now, and they left Earth. They came to the edge of human space, to a diplomatic station attached to the Xyloth Imperial Palace. Marcus took the only job he could get. Janitor. Night shift. It paid enough to feed Tommy and rent a small apartment. That was all Marcus wanted. To be quiet, to be forgotten, to not hurt anyone else. Most nights Marcus worked alone. The palace was huge. It had hundreds of rooms. He cleaned offices and hallways while everyone slept. He liked the quiet. He could think. Sometimes he thought about Sarah. Sometimes he thought about math equations. Old habits died hard. One night, Marcus was cleaning the royal study wing. This area was usually empty at night. The tutors went home, the students went to bed. But tonight, Marcus heard crying. He stopped pushing his cleaning cart. He listened. The sound came from behind a large door. It was the kind of crying that came from deep sadness, the kind that hurt the chest. Marcus knew he should walk away. Royal family business was not his concern. He was just a janitor. Getting involved with nobles was a good way to lose his job, but the crying continued. It sounded young. It sounded hopeless. Marcus thought of Tommy. He thought of how his son cried when he could not understand his homework. Marcus always helped Tommy when he cried like that. He walked to the door. It was open just a crack. Inside, he could see two Xyloth girls sitting at a huge table. Papers covered the table. Mathematics papers. The girls were the same age as each other. Twins, Marcus realized. They wore fine clothes with royal symbols. These were the princesses. Marcus had heard the rumors. Everyone had heard. The royal twins who could not do math. One princess had her head down on the table. She was sobbing. The other princess stared at a paper with empty eyes. Her hands shook. "I cannot do it," the crying princess said. "I am so stupid. I am broken." "We are both broken," the other one replied. Her voice was flat, dead. "Mother will send us away. They will fix our brains. We will not be us anymore." Marcus felt his heart break a little. He had heard about cognitive restructuring. The Xyloth could modify brains, change personalities, fix what they thought were defects. To them, it was medicine. To Marcus, it sounded like murder. Before he could think about it, Marcus knocked on the doorframe. Both princesses jumped. They turned to look at him. Their eyes were wide with fear. They saw a human in a janitor uniform. "I am sorry," Marcus said. He spoke slowly. His Xyloth language was not perfect. "I heard crying. Are you okay?" The princesses stared at him. Humans were not supposed to talk to royalty. Janitors were not supposed to be in this wing after hours without clearance. One princess stood up quickly. "You should not be here. You should leave." Marcus nodded. "Yes. I know. He looked at the papers on the table. He could see the math problems from where he stood. They were hard, very hard, but he recognized them. Orbital mechanics, vector calculus. "What are you working on?" The other princess looked surprised by the question. "It does not matter. We cannot solve it anyway." "May I see?" Marcus asked. He did not know why he asked. It was a stupid thing to do, but something in him, the old engineer part, wanted to understand. Why could these girls not do the math? The first princess looked angry now. "No, go away. If the guards find you here, you will be arrested." As if summoned by her words, footsteps echoed in the hall. Heavy footsteps. Guards. Two royal guards entered the room. They were tall Xyloth warriors, each carrying energy weapons. They saw Marcus immediately. Their eyes went hard. "Human, step away from the princesses," one guard commanded. Marcus raised his hands and stepped back. "I was just cleaning nearby. I heard crying and wanted to make sure everyone was safe." The guards did not care about his explanation. They grabbed his arms and pulled him from the room. The princesses watched silently. Marcus saw something in their faces. Was it hope or just curiosity? The guards took Marcus to a detention cell. They locked him inside and left. Marcus sat on the hard bench and put his head in his hands. He was going to lose his job. Worse, he might be sent back to Earth. What would happen to Tommy? Hours passed. Finally, a guard came and took Marcus to an office. It was a beautiful room with windows showing the stars. Behind a large desk sat a Xyloth woman who radiated power, Empress Kalindra herself. Marcus had never been this close to her before. She was magnificent and terrifying. Her silver markings seemed to glow. Her eyes were sharp and cold. "You are Marcus Webb," she said. It was not a question. "You work as a janitor on this station. You spoke to my daughters without permission." "Yes, Your Majesty," Marcus said. His mouth was dry. "I apologize. I meant no disrespect." "Why did you speak to them?" Marcus thought carefully about his answer. "I heard them crying. One of them said she was stupid. I have a son. When he cries like that, it hurts to hear. I just wanted to help." The Empress was quiet for a long moment. "You have a child?" "Yes. Tommy. He is 7. "And does your son struggle with mathematics?" Marcus was surprised by the question. Sometimes. He is still learning, but we work through it together. How do you teach him? Marcus did not understand why she was asking this. I try to make it make sense to him. I show him why math is useful. I let him make mistakes without getting angry. I try to help him see that numbers are not scary. The Empress stood and walked to the window. She was silent for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was different, quieter. My daughters have had the best tutors in the Empire. They have had every advantage. Nothing works. They fail every examination. The council says they are defective. She turned to look at Marcus. But you think you could help them? Marcus felt panic. Your Majesty, I am not a tutor. I am just a janitor. I used to be an engineer, but I failed at that too. Yet you teach your son. That is different. He is my son. I love him. And the math he does is simple. Basic addition and subtraction. Your daughters are studying advanced calculus. I saw the papers. That is university-level mathematics. But you understood the problems, the Empress said. She had been watching his face carefully. When you looked at their papers, you recognized the mathematics. Marcus could not deny it. Yes, I used to work with orbital mechanics, but understanding it and teaching it are different things. Empress Calindra walked back to her desk. She touched a control panel. A holographic display appeared, showing one of the math problems the twins had been working on. Explain this problem to me, she commanded. Not the solution. Explain what the problem is about. Marcus looked at the equations. This is about calculating how fast a ship's orbit will decay when it enters a planet's atmosphere. The numbers tell you how long the ship has before it burns up. That is correct, the Empress said. Now, I will tell you something interesting. When my daughters were asked to explain this same problem, they said it is a vector decay calculation with atmospheric friction variables. They repeated the words their tutor told them, but they did not understand what those words meant. Marcus began to understand. They have learned the language of mathematics, but not what the language describes. Exactly. The Empress sat down. She suddenly looked very tired. I am going to make you an offer, Marcus Webb. You will teach my daughters mathematics for 1 week. If they show improvement, you will continue. If they do not, you will be sent back to Earth with a generous payment for your time. And if I refuse, then you will be sent back to Earth immediately, without payment. She paused. And my daughters will undergo cognitive restructuring. Their minds will be modified to accept mathematics properly. They will become different people. Marcus felt sick. That is not really a choice. No, the Empress agreed. It is not. But it is the only choice I can give you. That night, Marcus met the twins in a small study room. They looked at him with suspicion and fear. I do not want to be here either, Marcus told them honestly. Your mother is making me do this, but I am going to try to help you. Can we agree to try together? Princess Serena, the one who had told him to leave, crossed her arms. Why should we trust you? You are just a human janitor. What can you teach us? Maybe nothing, Marcus admitted. But I want to ask you something first. What do you want to do with mathematics? Both twins looked confused. I do not understand the question, Princess Vexa said. Mathematics is something you use to do other things, Marcus explained. You use it to build spaceships, or plan a trip, or cook food, or play games. What do you want to use it for? Serena shook her head. Mathematics is not for doing things. Mathematics is pure knowledge. It exists on its own. That is what our tutors teach us, Vexa added. Mathematics is the language of the universe. It does not need a purpose beyond itself. Marcus sat down at the table with them. Can I tell you a secret? That is why you are failing. Both princesses looked shocked. What do you mean? Serena demanded. Your people treat mathematics like it is magic, Marcus said. like it is some special gift that only smart people have. But math is just a tool. It is a way to solve problems, and everyone can learn to use tools. But we have tried to learn, Vexa said. Her voice broke a little. We have studied for years. We work so hard. But when we take the tests, our minds stop working. We forget everything. That is because you are terrified, Marcus said gently. And you are terrified because everyone has told you that failing math means you are broken. But you are not broken. You just have not learned in a way that makes sense to your brains. How do you know our brains are different? Serena asked. Because everyone's brain is different, Marcus said. My son Tommy cannot learn by reading. He has to touch things and move around. Other children learn by listening. Some learn by seeing pictures. There is no one right way to learn. The twins were quiet. They had never heard anyone say this before. So how do you want to teach us? Vexa asked. Marcus smiled. First, I want to throw away all your textbooks, then I want to bake some cookies. Both princesses stared at him like he had grown a second head. Did you say cookies? Serena asked. Yes. We are going to start with cookies. Then maybe we will build something. Then maybe we will play a game. And somewhere in all of that, you will learn mathematics without even realizing it. That is ridiculous, Serena said, but Marcus could hear the smallest hint of hope in her voice. Maybe, Marcus agreed, but you have tried learning the serious way. It did not work, so let us try the ridiculous way. What do we have to lose? Vexa looked at her sister. Something passed between them without words. Then Vexa turned to Marcus and nodded. Okay, she said. We will try your way. Marcus felt relief and terror in equal measure. He had 1 week to do the impossible. 1 week to teach 2 traumatized princesses that mathematics was not their enemy. 1 week to prove that the human way of teaching could work. He just hoped it would be enough. The next morning, Marcus took the twins to the palace kitchens. The cooking staff looked shocked to see 2 princesses entering their workspace. They immediately stopped working and bowed. Please, continue with your work, Marcus told them. We are just going to use that table in the corner. He had brought ingredients for simple sugar cookies: flour, sugar, butter, eggs, vanilla extract. The twins looked at everything like they were alien artifacts. Have you ever cooked anything? Marcus asked. Both girls shook their heads. Royals do not cook, Serena said. We have staff for that. Well, today you are going to cook, Marcus said. We are going to make cookies, and you are going to do all the mathematics without even knowing it. He showed them the recipe. It was written in simple Xyloth, translated from an Earth recipe. This recipe makes 24 cookies. But I want to make 48 cookies. What do we need to do? The twins looked at each other nervously. This felt like a test. We need to... Vexa started, then stopped. We need more ingredients? Yes, exactly. How much more? 2 times more? Serena guessed. Right. We need to double everything, so look at this recipe. It says we need 3/4 of a cup of sugar. If we double that, how much sugar do we need? Both twins froze. Their eyes went blank. Marcus recognized that look. Fear. Stop, he said gently. Do not think about it like a math problem. Think about it like a real thing. Look. He poured 3/4 of a cup of sugar into a bowl. This is what the recipe needs for 24 cookies. If we are making 2 batches, how many times do we pour this amount? 2 times, Vexa said slowly. So pour it 2 times. Show me. Vexa picked up the measuring cup. She measured 3/4 of a cup and poured it in. Then she did it again. She looked at the bowl. That is 1½ cups, she said suddenly. 3/4 plus 3/4 equals 1½ Marcus grinned. Yes, you just did fractions. You just did addition. That is mathematics. Serena looked stunned. But that was too easy. It was easy because you were not trying to do math, Marcus explained. You were just trying to make cookies. The math happened naturally. They continued with the recipe. The twins measured and mixed. When they needed to divide the dough into equal pieces, Marcus had them figure out how. When they needed to set the timer, he had them calculate how long 48 cookies would take if they could only bake 24 at a time. By the time the cookies were done, both princesses were smiling. They had done mathematics for 2 hours straight and had not frozen once. "These taste wonderful," Vexa said, biting into a warm cookie. "And we made them with math." "Everything is made with math," Marcus said. "Every building, every ship, every machine. Math is not some abstract thing floating in space. It is how we build the world." Over the next few days, Marcus continued his unusual teaching methods. He took the twins to the hangar bay where human ships were docked. He showed them how pilots calculated flight paths. "See that ship?" He pointed to a small cargo vessel. "It needs to travel from here to the moon. The moon is moving. The station is moving. Everything is always moving. So how does the pilot know where to go?" "Vectors," Serena said. She had heard the word before. "But I do not understand what vectors are." Marcus picked up a piece of chalk. He drew an arrow on the ground. "This is a vector. It is just an arrow that shows direction and speed. The ship is moving this way at this speed." He drew another arrow. "The moon is moving that way at that speed. The pilot has to aim where the moon is going to be, not where it is now." He drew more arrows, showing how they combined. The twins watched carefully. Then Marcus handed them the chalk. "Now you try. Show me what happens if the ship increases its speed." The twins drew arrows. They made mistakes. They erased and tried again. Marcus did not get angry when they made errors. He just asked them to think about what the arrows meant. "In your textbooks, vectors are just numbers in brackets," Marcus said. "But in real life, vectors are directions. They tell you where to go. When you understand what they mean, the numbers make sense." Another day, Marcus brought building blocks to their study session. They were simple toys meant for children. The twins looked embarrassed to be playing with toys. "We are too old for this," Serena protested. "Humor me," Marcus said. "I want you to build a tower. But there is a rule. The tower has to be exactly 50 centimeters tall." "That is easy," Vexa said. She started stacking blocks. "Wait," Marcus stopped her. "You have to plan it first. Look at the blocks. They are different sizes. Some are 10 centimeters, some are 5 centimeters, some are 2 centimeters. You have to figure out which blocks to use before you start building." This was a puzzle. The twins liked puzzles. They measured the blocks. They talked to each other, planning combinations. They were doing arithmetic without fear because they were focused on the goal, not the math. "If we use 3 10-centimeter blocks, that is 30, Serena said. "Then we need 20 more." "We could use 4 5-centimeter blocks," Vexa suggested. They built the tower together. When they measured it, it was exactly 50 centimeters. They both cheered. Marcus smiled. These were the same girls who froze during math tests. But when the math had a purpose, when it was connected to something real, they could do it easily. The hardest part was breaking their fear of mistakes. The twins had been taught that errors were shameful. Every time they got something wrong, they tensed up. One afternoon, Vexa was working on a problem about calculating fuel consumption. She made an error in her multiplication. When she checked her answer and realized it was wrong, she threw down her pen and put her head on the table. "I am stupid," she said. "I cannot even multiply correctly." Marcus sat down next to her. "Can I tell you about the biggest mistake I ever made?" Vexa looked up at him. "What?" "When I was an engineer on Earth, I designed a fuel system for a spacecraft. I made an error in my calculations. Just a small one. I forgot to convert units from one measurement system to another. That small mistake caused an explosion. 3 people died. Both twins were staring at him now. "I am telling you this because I want you to understand something," Marcus continued. "I made a mistake that killed people. It was the worst thing I ever did. I still think about it every day. But that mistake does not mean I am bad at math. It means I am human. I make errors. Everyone makes errors." "But you stopped being an engineer," Serena said quietly. "Yes. I was too afraid to try again. I let that one mistake define me." Marcus looked at both of them. "Do not be like me. Do not let fear of mistakes stop you from learning. Your mistake just now, it hurt nobody. You just wrote a wrong number. You can fix it and try again." Vexa picked up her pen slowly. She erased her wrong answer. She tried the multiplication again. This time, she got it right. "See," Marcus said, "you learned from the mistake. That is how mathematics works. You try, you fail, you learn. You try again. It is not about being perfect. It is about getting better." By the end of the week, the twins were different. They did not freeze when they saw numbers. They asked questions instead of staying silent. They tried solutions even when they were not sure. Most importantly, they stopped hating mathematics. On the last day before their test, Marcus sat with them in their study room. "Tomorrow is the examination," Serena said. She sounded nervous, but not terrified. "What if we freeze again?" "You might," Marcus said honestly. "Fear does not disappear in 1 week, but I want you to remember something. Mathematics is not your enemy, it is just a tool, and you know how to use tools now." "What if the test is like before?" Vexa asked. "What if it is all abstract problems with no context?" "Then give it context yourself," Marcus said. "When you see a problem, imagine what it is about. Turn the numbers into something real in your mind. Draw pictures if you need to. Show your work. And if you make mistakes, that is okay. Mistakes are part of learning." The twins looked at each other. They were scared, but they were also ready. "Thank you, Marcus," Serena said softly. "Even if we fail tomorrow, thank you for showing us that we are not broken." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "You were never broken. You just needed someone to teach you in your language instead of someone else's." The examination hall was enormous. Hundreds of nobles filled the seats, all dressed in formal robes. They had come to watch the royal twins fail again. Some looked sympathetic. Most looked curious or judgmental. The council members sat in the front row, their faces stern. Marcus stood in the servants' section at the back of the hall. His heart pounded in his chest. Tommy was beside him, holding his hand. Marcus had brought his son today because he needed the support. Whatever happened now would determine their future. Empress Kalindra sat on a raised platform, her face showing no emotion. She looked like a statue carved from stone. The twins entered from a side door. They wore simple white robes, the traditional clothing for examination candidates. They looked small and vulnerable as they walked to 2 desks at the center of the hall. Every eye watched them. Marcus tried to catch their attention, to give them an encouraging look, but they were too far away. The chief examiner, an elderly Xyloth with dark blue markings, stood and addressed the audience. "Today, Princess Serena and Princess Vexa will attempt the Royal Mathematics examination for the 4th time. The examination consists of 10 problems covering advanced mathematics. They have 4 hours to complete it." He activated holographic displays in front of each twin. Complex equations appeared in the air, glowing blue. Marcus was too far away to read them, but he could see the twins' faces. They both went pale. The examination began. For the first 10 minutes, neither twin moved. They stared at their displays like frozen statues. Marcus felt his stomach drop. They were freezing again. All their progress meant nothing if they could not function during the actual test. In the audience, people began to whisper. The council members leaned toward each other, speaking quietly. Marcus could imagine what they were saying. The humans' teaching had failed. The princesses were defective. It was time for cognitive restructuring. Then something changed. Princess Vexa reached out and touched her display. She manipulated the hologram, rotating it. She was looking at the problem from different angles. Next to her, Serena picked up a stylus. She began to write, but not equations. She was drawing. Marcus could not see what she was drawing, but he recognized the motion. She was visualizing the problem, just like he had taught her. More whispers spread through the audience. The chief examiner frowned. "Princess Vexa, what are you doing?" Vexa did not look at him. She was focused on her work. "I am solving the problem, examiner." "By rotating the display? That is not proper methodology." "It helps me understand it," Vexa said. Her voice was steady. "May I continue?" The examiner looked at Empress Kalindra. The Empress nodded once. "Let her work." Both twins continued. They worked slowly, much slower than other candidates would. They made mistakes and erased them. They drew pictures and diagrams. Their methods looked messy and chaotic compared to the elegant, abstract mathematics the Xyloth preferred. But they were working. They were not frozen. An hour passed, then 2. The twins had completed 3 problems each. Marcus could see the tension in their shoulders. They were struggling, but they were fighting through it. Then Vexa reached a problem that made her stop. It was about quantum probability matrices, something Marcus had not taught her because it was too advanced. She stared at the equations, and Marcus saw the old fear creeping into her face. She was going to freeze. He could see it happening. But then Vexa did something unexpected. She raised her hand. The chief examiner looked annoyed. "Yes, Princess? May I approach this problem differently?" The entire hall went silent. No one had ever asked permission to change methodology during an examination. "What do you mean differently?" the examiner asked. "The problem is written in abstract notation," Vexa said. "I do not understand it in this form. May I rewrite it as a physical scenario?" The council members erupted in protest. Several stood from their seats, shouting objections. This was outrageous. This was not how mathematics was done. This was contamination from human teaching. The chief examiner raised his hand for silence. "The examination has strict rules. All candidates must use standard notation and standard methods." Empress Kalindra stood. Everyone went quiet immediately. "Examiner," the Empress said, her voice cutting through the hall like a blade, "does the examination require correct answers, or does it require correct methods?" "Your Majesty, it requires both. Proper mathematics is about proper thinking." "Then let me ask you this," the Empress said. "If my daughter arrives at the correct answer through unorthodox methods, is the answer less correct?" The examiner hesitated. "Well, no, Your Majesty. A correct answer is correct." "Then let her work. If her answer is wrong, she fails. If her answer is right, she succeeds. The method is irrelevant." The council members looked like they had been slapped, but no one dared argue with the Empress. Vexa took a deep breath. She began transforming the abstract quantum probability problem into something she could visualize. She drew particles as small spheres. She drew probability paths as branches on a tree. It was messy. It was crude. But it was something she could understand. Next to her, Serena watched her sister work. Then she looked at her own difficult problem, something about temporal navigation equations. She began doing the same thing, turning abstract mathematics into concrete scenarios. The twins worked for another hour. The audience watched in fascination and horror. This was not how mathematics was supposed to look. Where was the elegant abstraction? Where was the pure logic? This looked like children playing with toys. But slowly, answers emerged. Both twins filled their displays with work. They checked their calculations. They fixed mistakes. And finally, with 30 minutes remaining, both of them set down their styluses. They were done. The chief examiner collected their work. He reviewed it with 2 other council mathematicians. The hall was completely silent as everyone waited. Finally, the examiner stood. His face was complicated, showing confusion and reluctance. Princess Serena has completed 8 problems correctly and 2 partially correctly. Princess Vexa has completed 9 problems correctly and 1 partially correctly. He paused. Both princesses have passed the examination. The hall erupted. Half the audience was cheering. The other half was shouting in protest. The council members looked outraged. Tommy jumped up and down next to Marcus. "They did it, Dad! They passed!" Marcus felt tears in his eyes. He had not cried in years, but now he could not stop. The twins had done it. They had actually done it. But the celebration was short-lived. A council member stood and shouted over the noise. "This is unacceptable. These methods are not proper Xyloth mathematics. They are human contamination. The results should be nullified." Other council members joined in. "The examination has standards for a reason. This sets a dangerous precedent. Our children will see this and think that proper mathematics does not matter." Empress Kalindra raised her hand. Silence fell again. "Council members," she said coldly, "my daughters solved the problems. They arrived at correct answers. By what authority do you claim their methods are wrong?" "Your Majesty," the chief examiner said carefully, "the methods are unorthodox. They are simplified. They lack the elegance and purity of true mathematical thinking." "Simplified?" The Empress stepped down from her platform. She walked to the twins' displays and examined their work. This problem about quantum probability. Princess Vexa transformed it into a decision tree with probability weights. Is the mathematics incorrect? No, Your Majesty. It is mathematically sound. And this temporal navigation problem. Princess Serena visualized it as a physical timeline with branching paths. Is this incorrect? No, but then what is the problem? The Empress turned to face the council. You say their methods are simplified. I say their methods are applied. You want mathematics that exists in pure abstraction, disconnected from reality. They have learned mathematics that solves real problems. But this is not our way, another council member protested. This is the human way. Are we to abandon millennia of Xyloth mathematical tradition because one human janitor taught them tricks? Marcus felt all eyes turn toward him. He wanted to disappear. He was just a janitor. He had no right to change an empire's traditions. But then Empress Kalindra said something that changed everything. Perhaps our tradition creates brilliant calculators but poor thinkers, she said. Perhaps we have been teaching mathematics as if it were religion instead of a tool. Perhaps we need to learn from the humans. The hall erupted again. This was heresy. This was revolution. The council members shouted their objections, but the Empress was not finished. I am establishing a new academy, the Applied Cognition Academy. It will teach mathematics using both Xyloth and human methods. Marcus Webb will direct it. Marcus felt like the floor had dropped away. Your Majesty, I am just a janitor. I cannot... You are a teacher, the Empress said, looking directly at him. And you will continue teaching. That is not a request. The twins ran to Marcus, pushing through the crowd. They both hugged him, crying and laughing at the same time. We did it, Serena said. We passed. Marcus hugged them back, feeling overwhelmed. He had come to this palace trying to be invisible. Instead, he had started a revolution. 6 months had passed since the examination. Marcus still could not believe his life had changed so completely. He was no longer a janitor. He was the director of a new academy, teaching Xyloth children in ways their people had never used before. The Applied Cognition Academy occupied an entire wing of the palace. It had 15 students now, all children of noble families. Their parents had been skeptical at first, but they had seen the twins' success. They wanted the same for their own children. Every morning, Marcus woke up in his new apartment. It was much nicer than his old quarters. Tommy had his own room now, with a window overlooking the palace gardens. His son was thriving. He had made friends with some of the Xyloth children. He was learning their language better than Marcus ever would. Marcus's teaching methods had evolved. He had hired 3 Xyloth tutors who understood traditional mathematics. Together, they created a hybrid approach. Students learned abstract mathematical theory from the Xyloth tutors. Then they came to Marcus to learn how to apply it to real problems. The traditional mathematicians were still angry. They said Marcus was destroying pure mathematics. They said he was teaching tricks instead of true understanding. But the results spoke for themselves. Academy students were not just passing their examinations. They were excelling. More importantly, they were not afraid of mathematics anymore. Princess Serena and Princess Vexa continued their studies. They were preparing for advanced examinations now, the ones required for royal administrators. They visited the academy often, helping to teach younger students. One afternoon, Serena was demonstrating geometry to a group of 8-year-olds. She was using physical shapes, letting the children touch and manipulate them while learning about angles and areas. "See how these 2 triangles fit together to make a rectangle?" she explained. "That is how we know the formula for a triangle's area. It is half of a rectangle's area." The children understood immediately. They could see it with their own eyes. Marcus watched from the doorway, smiling. Serena had become a natural teacher. After the lesson, she came over to him. "I never thought I would enjoy teaching," she said. "But when I see them understand something, it makes me happy." "You are good at it," Marcus told her. "You remember what it felt like to not understand. That makes you patient." "I want to keep doing this," Serena said. "When I become an administrator, I want to reform the entire education system, not just mathematics, everything. I want to teach children that learning is about understanding, not memorizing." Marcus felt proud. This was exactly what he had hoped for. The twins had not just learned mathematics. They had learned to think differently about learning itself. But not everyone was happy with the changes. The Royal Council still fought against the Academy. They brought complaints to the Empress weekly. The mathematics was too simple. The methods were undignified. Human influence was corrupting Xyloth culture. One day, Marcus was called to a council meeting. He entered the chamber nervously, with Tommy staying outside with a guard. The council members sat in a semicircle, looking down at him from high seats. Empress Calindra sat at the center, her face neutral. "Marcus Webb," the chief counselor began, "we have concerns about your academy." "What concerns?" Marcus asked. "Your methods produce students who can solve practical problems, but they lack the deep theoretical understanding that true mathematicians possess. They are technicians, not scholars." Marcus took a breath. "With respect, counselor, I disagree. My students understand why mathematics works, not just how to do it. That is deeper understanding." "You teach them to draw pictures and use toys," another counselor said with disgust. "That is not mathematics. That is children's games." "Some of the greatest human scientists used pictures and physical models," Marcus replied. "Einstein imagined riding on a beam of light. Feynman drew diagrams to understand quantum physics. Visualization is not childish. It is powerful." "But it is not our way," the chief counselor insisted. "The Xyloth have always approached mathematics through pure abstraction. Your way may work for humans, but we are not humans." Marcus felt frustration rising. "Then why did your way fail the princesses? They were taught by your best mathematicians for years. It did not work. They were going to have their minds modified because your methods failed them." The chamber went silent. Speaking so bluntly to the council was dangerous. But Empress Calindra spoke up. "He is correct. Our traditional methods failed my daughters. His methods succeeded. That is undeniable." "Your Majesty," the chief counselor said carefully, We acknowledge that the humans' methods worked for the princesses, but perhaps they worked only because the princesses have unusual minds. Perhaps they needed unusual teaching because they are different from normal Xyloth children. Marcus felt anger now. Are you saying they are defective again? Because I have news for you. In 6 months, I have taught 15 Xyloth children. All of them were struggling with mathematics. All of them are now succeeding. Are all 15 of them defective? Or maybe, just maybe, your teaching methods are not as perfect as you think. How dare you? A counselor began. Enough, the Empress commanded. Marcus Webb, you will continue leading the academy. The council will provide any resources you require. This discussion is over. The council members looked furious, but they could not argue with the Empress. After the meeting, Marcus walked in the palace gardens to calm down. He found a bench and sat down, putting his head in his hands. He was tired. He missed the simplicity of being a janitor. Back then, all he had to do was clean floors. Now he was fighting against an entire culture's traditions. Dad? Marcus looked up. Tommy was standing there, having followed him from the council chamber. Hey, buddy, Marcus said. I am okay. Tommy sat next to him. You looked sad in there. I watched through the window. I am just tired, Marcus admitted. These people do not want to change. They think their way is the only way. But your way works better, Tommy said, with the absolute certainty of a 7-year-old. Marcus smiled. Sometimes being right is not enough. Sometimes people are more comfortable being wrong in familiar ways than being right in new ways. That is dumb, Tommy said. Yes, Marcus agreed. It is. As the months continued, more families requested admission to the academy. Marcus had to turn students away because they did not have enough space. The success rate was impossible to ignore. Academy students were scoring higher on standardized tests than students from traditional schools. Other schools began quietly adopting some of Marcus's methods. They did not admit it publicly. They still criticized the academy in official statements. But Marcus heard from his students that their cousins and friends were now learning with manipulatives and visual aids in their regular schools. Change was happening slowly, despite the resistance. 1 year after the examination, the twins took their advanced administrator tests. These were much harder than the basic mathematics examination. They covered not just mathematics, but logic, system analysis, and strategic planning. Both princesses passed with high marks. The news spread across the empire. The twin princesses who had been failures were now being held up as examples of success. At the celebration ceremony, Princess Vexa gave a speech to the assembled nobles and dignitaries. Marcus sat in the audience with Tommy, watching proudly. 1 year ago, I believed I was broken, Vexa said. Her voice was strong and clear. I had failed examinations 3 times. I could not understand mathematics no matter how hard I studied. The council said I was defective. They said my sister and I were not fit to rule. She paused, looking around the room. But I was not defective. I was being taught in a language my mind did not speak. When Marcus Webb taught us mathematics in a different way, we discovered we could learn. We discovered we were not stupid. We were just different. Serena stood and joined her sister at the podium. The Xyloth people believe that mathematics is the highest form of intelligence. We believe that those who cannot do mathematics are inferior. But Marcus Webb taught us something important. Intelligence has many forms. Understanding comes in many ways. There is no single correct way to think. Our empire has been teaching mathematics the same way for thousands of years. Vexa continued. We have told ourselves that our way is the best way. But how many brilliant minds have we lost because they could not learn in our traditional style? How many children have been labeled as failures because they needed different teaching methods? The audience was completely silent. This was radical thinking. Today, My sister and I stand before you as proof that different methods can work, Serena said. We are not asking you to abandon Xyloth traditions. We are asking you to expand them. Learn from the humans. Learn from other species. There is wisdom in being flexible. When the speech ended, the applause was mixed. Some people stood and cheered. Others sat silent, disapproving. But Marcus noticed that many of the younger nobles were applauding enthusiastically. The next generation was more open to change. After the ceremony, Marcus was approached by Empress Kalindra. She looked at him with something that might have been respect. "You came here as a janitor trying to hide from your past," she said. "Now you have changed the future of my empire's education system." Marcus shook his head. "I just wanted to help two girls who were crying. I never intended any of this." The best changes often begin with small acts of kindness, the Empress said. You saw my daughters as people who needed help, not as royal problems to be solved. That made all the difference. "What will happen now?" Marcus asked. "The Council still hates the Academy." "The Council will adapt or become irrelevant," the Empress said simply. "Results matter more than tradition. Your students are succeeding. That is all the proof we need." That evening, Marcus sat with Tommy in their apartment. His son was doing homework, working through simple multiplication problems. Marcus watched him work, seeing the same patience and problem-solving approach he had taught the twins. "Dad," Tommy said, "when I grow up, I want to be a teacher like you." Marcus felt his heart swell. "You would be a good teacher. Can I ask you something?" "Always." "Do you still think about the mistake you made, the one on Earth?" Marcus was surprised by the question. "Yes, I think about it every day." "Does it still make you sad?" "Yes," Marcus admitted, "but not as sad as before. I cannot fix what I did wrong, but I can try to do better now. Helping people learn, helping the twins, helping you. It does not erase my mistake, but it makes me feel like I am doing something good." Tommy nodded seriously. "I think the people who died would be happy that you are helping other people now." Marcus hugged his son tightly. "When did you get so wise?" "I learned from you," Tommy said simply. 2 years later, the Applied Cognition Academy had expanded to 3 buildings and 200 students. Other academies across the empire had begun adopting similar teaching methods. The rigid traditional approach was slowly giving way to something more flexible. Marcus was no longer alone in his work. He had trained 20 Xyloth teachers in his methods. They were spreading across the empire, bringing new approaches to education. The twins, now 19 years old, had taken on official roles as royal administrators. They spent their time reforming government education policies, pushing for changes that would help struggling students across all 40-star systems. On the anniversary of that first examination, Marcus stood in the academy courtyard with the twins, watching the new students arrive for their first day. "I still cannot believe this all happened because I stopped to ask if you were okay," Marcus said. "That is the thing about kindness," Serena said. "You never know how far it will reach." "We were drowning," Vexa added. "You threw us a rope. That simple act changed everything." Marcus watched the young students entering the building, nervous and excited. Some of them would struggle. Some of them would fail tests. But they would not be told they were broken. They would not be forced to change who they were. They would be taught that their minds were valid, even if they worked differently than expected. "You know," Marcus said quietly, "when I left Earth, I thought my life was over. I thought I had nothing left to give. I was wrong. Humans have a saying, I think," Serena said. "About teachers?" Marcus smiled. "Those who can, do. Those who can't, teach. It is meant as an insult, but I think it is backward. Those who can do are valuable, but those who can teach create others who can do. Teaching is how knowledge spreads. Teaching is how civilizations grow. A small Xyloth child approached them nervously. She looked about 8 years old, with bright green markings on her face. "Excuse me," she said shyly. "Are you the human teacher? Marcus Webb?" "Yes, I am," Marcus said, kneeling down to her level. "My mother says you help children who are bad at mathematics. I am very bad at mathematics. Can you help me?" Marcus looked at the twins, then back at the little girl. He smiled warmly. "You are not bad at mathematics," he told her. "You just have not learned it in the right way yet. Come with me. Let us find out how your mind works best." The little girl's face lit up with hope. She took Marcus's hand, and they walked together into the academy. Behind them, the twins watched with satisfaction. The janitor, who had changed an empire, was still doing what he did best, helping one struggling student at a time with patience and kindness, showing them that being different was not the same as being broken. And across the Xyloth Empire, in schools and academies on 40 different worlds, other teachers were learning the same lesson. That intelligence came in many forms, that teaching required flexibility, and that sometimes the most important thing was not the method you used, but the simple act of believing that every student could learn. All because one human father, working the night shift as a janitor, had stopped when he heard someone crying and asked a simple question. "What's the problem supposed to be about?" Sometimes, the greatest changes begin with the smallest acts of compassion. Marcus's stomach dropped. He had made a terrible mistake.